Hello everyone and welcome to Purple Rose Crafts. Today we're going to talk about a Tunisian knit stitch. So if you are not familiar with our channel, I am Amanda with Purple Rose Crafts and this is our second Tunisian crochet video. So check that one out. I'll link it in the description below and up above in the card. If you haven't used Tunisian before, it is a lovely kind of interesting different way to crochet. So what we need is our Tunisian crochet hook. This is a 4.5mm and we are using, this is just a leftover ball that I had, loops and threads, impeccable. The color is called Popsicle Blue, and you might have seen this in our cabling video if you watched that one previously on the channel. So we're going to chain any number of stitches. Honestly, it does not have to be an even or odd number. What we're going to do is we're going to insert our needle into the back loop of our chain stitch here. Here we're starting with 15 chains if you guys would like to give that a try. We're going to go ahead and go into the back loop of our chain stitch. So the same as we did in our previous video. So if you guys have watched that, you know that we've already done this in our previous video. So we've got our two loops on the front, which makes up our chain. And then we have our back loop here, which is kind of our like third loop. So we're going to actually crochet into that one. So we draw up a loop and then we're going to continue across the same way that we did. So the initial beginning row of this video is going to be exactly the same as our previous one. Once we get into row number 2, that's really where things change, okay? And it's one small modification to actually create the knit stitch from our standard Tunisian crochet stitch, okay? So let's go ahead and finish up this row and then we're going to continue drawing back through the same way that we do our backwards row for row number 1. As we did in the previous video as well. All right, so here's the end of our the forwards pass of our first row. You can see our chains here on the bottom, all nice and pretty. And now what we're gonna do is we're going to go ahead and make our backwards pass. So to start out our backwards pass, we start by just chaining that first stitch, and then we hook our yarn over and then come through 2, come through 2, and then come through 2 all the way back across our first row. As you have already guessed, this is the same as straight Tunisian crochet, okay? So, and as I said before, okay? So let's finish off this and then I'll show you the variation to go ahead and finish, or to change this into Tunisian knit stitch, okay? All right, so ordinarily in a Tunisian crochet stitch, we're going to actually catch that vertical bar, which you can see here. Now, to do a Tunisian knit stitch, what we're going to actually do is we're going to catch this bar, but we actually are going to catch the back side of it as well, and we're going to go through the back. Okay, now we're going to grab our yarn and come back through this way and loop up our yarn. Okay, so now we're going to catch our vertical bar here, but we're going to go through to the back. So then again, insert through the 2 bars. And so there's our bar there. If we catch a regular Tunisian, would be through this way, through the front. Now we're going to go through the back this way. Okay, and that's why we're going to drop our loops. All right, so let's continue. So you can see here from the front, hopefully you can see here, there's the back side of the bar, there's the front side of the vertical bar, and we're going to actually insert in between. Okay, and then drop our loops. All right, let's go ahead and finish off our row. All right, and here we are at the end of the row. And so what I usually like to do is just do a regular Tunisian crochet stitch around everything that's here, okay? So that those last 2 parts of the loop, and drop our last loop for our stitch, okay? Now again, same backwards pass. So every backwards pass is exactly the same. We draw through just our first one for a chain stitch as an anchor, come through 2, come through 2, come through 2, and all the way back across our row, okay? Now, as you can see, I'm not holding on to any of my stitches with my right hand. I did mention this in the previous video, but it is worth mentioning again, is that I like to let my stitches kind of flow off my crochet hook easily kind of on their own. Now, of course, if you're working with something a lot wider, like I was doing in the previous video with the dishcloth, that one had about 30 stitches on my needle, so, or on my hook. So that one did make things a little bit different. You can't always, you know, hold the end of the needle back here as you're kind of working. I mean, I guess you can, but that makes things a little uncomfortable for me. So we're gonna go back, we're gonna do our chain one at the beginning of the row, and now we're gonna continue. So this actually does not quite look like anything yet, right? So nothing's really happened. happening. So let's continue and do our third row, and then I'll be able to show you more closely what this is going to turn into. All right, so we're continuing to go in through between those two vertical bars, loop our hook, and continue on our row. Now I've done 4 rows here now, and you can see what's actually happening here is we're getting that kind of upside down V stitch happening in our Tunisian crochet. Now you can also still see our vertical bars here in our top row, and we do have an extra way, a special way to kind of finish off that last row. But of course, if you are using Tunisian crochet and it's something that you can easily, you know, make an adjustment. Look, if we turn it over, it looks just like knit. Nobody would have any idea. This top row here looks just like we finished it off, you know, with a standard knit bind off. And honestly, nobody would be the wiser if you decided to go ahead and call this knitting. So let's go ahead. I'm going to add a couple more rows, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how to finish off this last row. Just that way we have a little bit better swatch. Okay, so I'll be right back in just a moment, and we'll talk about how to finish everything off. All right, so we were working on our Tunisian knit stitch here, and so I actually grabbed my Teenage Dream yarn, which you guys have seen in a previous video. I went ahead and started working on this beautiful section of the Tunisian knit stitch. I had intended to make it into one of those twist front headbands that we see so often, and but I will give you guys a little secret. With this Tunisian knit stitch, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Look, it's gorgeous, nice and lovely V stitches. That really does look like knitting, which is so awesome. But as you guys can see, this is what's happening to my fabric. So it is curling up. This small section of work that I had here, I was working on intermittently for about 2 weeks. So as you guys can see, we got about, I don't know, 8 inches done across our fabric. Now, if I was to go ahead and make that into that twist front headband, you know, I would be putting my wrong sides together like so, sewing up the side, and then sewing my ends together like so. Now, that's fine. Like, this would actually look fine. Once you go ahead and sew it together, it would stay open, it would stay flat, but it's really hard to work on. So, and extremely slow going down the fabric, okay? So I just want to caution you guys, of course, you know, I want to be honest with you when we go ahead and do a stitch. Most of the stitches I really do enjoy. The Tunisian the regular Tunisian stitch I loved. It seemed to work up really quickly in sort of like a, you know, a little bit slower, kind of maybe more like a single crochet pattern, but it was fine. This one is so much slower. I don't know why. It's just the way that it worked out. I'm not sure if it's maybe the yarn I chose or what, but it just was super, super slow. If you want to go ahead and give this one a try, honestly, go for it. It's super cute. It looks great. It's just really slow. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do our bind off row. So now we're gonna take our crochet hook. We're gonna go ahead and insert it into our stitch as we would for a Tunisian knit stitch. We're going to draw up our loop and back through the loop on our hook, okay? So now we're gonna come back in again, same as we did for every other stitch. Turn over, draw up our loop, and draw it through like a slip stitch if you are a crocheter. All right, so down, back and through, yarn over, draw back, and through the last stitch on our hook. So this gives us what we see here as a knit stitch, the same as the rest of the Tunisian stitches we've done so far, and it gives us this lovely kind of crochet top edging, like it was a, say, knit bind off or even a standard crochet edging. Looks like that as well. All right, so we're just gonna go ahead and finish off our row like that. So there you go, guys. I hope you guys enjoy this one. You know, give our video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you're gonna go ahead and give this stitch a try. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.